All right. We will open our meeting, call our meeting to order at this time. And our first item that we have is a time of public comment. We have a 5-minute limit per person, per speaker. And you have a list. We don't have anyone signed up.
But if there's somebody that's an attendee that would like to speak, they just need to send me a message in the chat bar.
All right.
So if there's anybody online that would like to speak, just send a message in the chat and I'll unmute you.
We could open that up again, I guess, after our director's report and so forth. See if anybody has to come in and wants to
Okay.
make a comment. So at this time, then we'll go ahead and move to our director's election recount report.
Okay. So we did complete the recount of the presidential race yesterday. Everything was scanned and we reported what was on the summary report. So Tara, if you can put that up so that people can see that as well. Okay, so this is the new recount summary report showing the results of the scans that we ran. Just a slight comment that the total ballots cast, if you look on that top row, that's the times cast, is the total number of pieces of paper, basically. It is 34 ballots less than what was in the original count. So we originally had 396,551. And, you know, this is part and parcel of recounts and why we're having to recertify. You know, there are some times that perhaps the scanners, after we had handled the ballots so many times that they took two, you know, double fed the ballots. Or there's also a possibility that in the original count, the operators, you know, scanned more than they should have. You know, scanned a single ballot more than once. So, you know, that's the reason that we do a recount and we have a slightly different result. So it's incumbent upon this board to recertify the new recounted results. The recount went very well. You know, we had the opportunity, a very well needed opportunity to give staff the holiday weekend off, and still we were able to complete the recount on Wednesday. So that was a well needed break for a lot of the staff. We are still doing the activities over at the Jim Miller Park for January and issuing ballots out there, but all of the recount activity was finished yesterday. I'll let you kind of look at that for a moment and see if anybody has any questions. And then we can go ahead and perhaps have a motion to certify the recounted results.
What differences were there in the two presidential candidates, the main candidates, as far as their votes there?
Okay, let me bring up the previous results. All right, so in the original results, Donald Trump received 165,459. Joseph Biden received 221,846. And Joe Jorgensen got 6,441. The unresolved write-ins in the original was 1,794. So in the write-in part down there, this system only reports that there was a write-in, so the write-in was selected. It doesn't capture the name of the person that was written in. So that's a manual process, and we did not have time to again manually go through it, but since the recount is a scanned recount, the scanning part was complete. The hand tally of certified write-ins We certified last time, and so the result will stand for the certified write-ins.
How many certified writing candidates did we have? Do you recall?
I believe 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a list of them out there.
Yeah, I saw the list out there. I don't know, how many attendees do we have now? Any at all? I know we don't have any speakers, but
Yeah, so I think when we certified last time on the 13th, we certified, I believe, 381 certified votes or certified candidates.
Wow.
So, I mean, to find them all again was just not going to happen.
No.
So,
It's not in question anyhow. So.
yeah,
Right.
so we did the rescan as required, and that's what we're going to go with.
all right. Anybody else on our board have comments or questions?
Make a motion to certify.
Go ahead. You make
Okay, I make that motion to
recertify.
recertify.
All right. And I'll second that.
Jessica
Okay.
was willing to.
I didn't see that, whichever then. All right, any further discussion or questions? If not, then all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, looks like we're unanimous on that, have certified that. Did we have any other business to conduct?
Not unless the board has other questions. We do not have any.
I'd like to say a couple of things. First, I'd like to thank you and the staff because this election cycle has been a renewal election cycle. Those board members who were able to go to John Miller were able to witness how tedious and dedicated the workers were there. On another note, I just feel that I have to mention a couple of things about our advanced voting, because there have been so many questions. We are in the national spotlight for, we were in the national spotlight for the presidential. We are definitely still the focus for the senatorial. There's been even in the past 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, there's a lot of communication about our advanced voting schedule. So I just think it's important that we board members all have detailed information about the efforts that we made, about the barriers that we had that caused us to decrease by almost 50% our advanced voting locations, and how we made the decision about which advanced voting locations we actually have available for our voters.
Right. So I'll speak a little bit about the early voting locations and sort of where we got to having just 5 locations instead of what we had previously. We had 11. But just a, kind of a basic comment. It wasn't our intention to reduce the number of locations, but it's also not uncommon for each type of election to have a different number of early voting locations. Unlike the election day polling places, they're not set and they don't stay that way all the time. So we look at, past trends, what type of election it is, and what kind of reservations are available, how much time the spaces will give us, and that will determine for each election which places are open and for how long. So, I've gotten a lot of comments from people about that we're closing locations, but again, they're not set in stone and they're not closed because they were never open. Each election is unique and has its own set of extra locations. Each county is able to set their own dates, or not dates, but hours and locations beyond their main office and their main business hours. Everything else is discretionary for each county. But it really wasn't our intention to drop back quite that much because we have 2 high-profile Senate races on this election. However, our hands were sort of forced about this with this election. We have only so many advanced voting trained managers and assistant managers, It's required that we have a manager and 2 assistants at all times at a location. And to do the 11 locations that we had before, we had the 3 people assigned to each location for the entire period. So 3 weeks working 6 days a week from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. or later was too much for people. And they basically, some have quit, some have left us, and others have said, well, I'm not doing that. And I'm not doing that around the holidays. So what we had to do was consolidate so that each location had sort of 2 sets of those management staff people, and they could work more reasonable hours to actually have their holidays as well. So between the pandemic and, you know, the holidays, the end of the election cycle where we, you know, lost a lot of our trained workers anyway, this was as much as we could staff. And I know a lot of people say, well, can't you just use your poll managers that you use on election day? And it's really very, very different. Just as an example, in advanced voting, you can't close down the machines at the end of the night or you've closed the election. So they have to have special training on how to, you know, record the numbers for the first day, close the machine but not close it down, open the machines the next day. It's a very different process than the election day equipment. In addition, the advanced voting managers have to be pretty well versed on the state's ENET system, the voter registration system, to issue ballots and to solve problems when there aren't simple situations. And they are not, the poll managers at the election day don't use ElectionNet. They don't know anything about it. So what we have out there for advanced voting are people that work in our office that help with issuing ballots, that know how to work in the system, that are trained on that, and have received enough training to make judgment calls on the odd situations that always come up, which the management team has to, at a satellite location, has to make. So it's not like we have a second string of people waiting to just jump up. Hopefully, you know, in the next election cycle, we'll be able to train up more people. We won't have a pandemic to cut our staff. And we'll, by the end of that cycle, hopefully there won't be this kind of an issue with staffing. You know, I apologize that we won't be able to offer what we normally would, but we tried what we could, and you know, that was what we could do to even open the 5.
How do we decide on before behind?
The locations, what we've traditionally done is north, south, east, and west. And so the south location at Riverside, even though it's further south than we would like, it's the biggest parking lot and the biggest space for the most people. East Cobb is just where we've traditionally been at the government center. It's not a large facility, but they seem to move people through pretty quickly. The west is where we normally go at Boots Ward, and then we actually are not going to be able to use the North Cobb Senior Center like we would have done before. We've been moved to the North Cobb Library. So that was a recent development. You know, it also goes with what facility will let you be there. But in this case, that wasn't the major issue. It was the management staff.
So we would not have even had staff if we had, for example, had the Civic Center as another center like we had, you know, some years ago. We would have had the staff for that large.
We really don't. Well, you know, like I said, we doubled up brought in, you know, instead of 3 people in the management team for each location, we have maybe 5, 6 if we're lucky, so that they can, you know, not work a double shift all the time. But those people would have been their own location previously, but they aren't willing to do it that way anymore. So we have our work cut out for us to train up some new people, but like I said, this being at the end of the cycle, there's no time to do that.
Those details are helpful. Yeah, we have talked back and forth about this, those details. And only one other thing has come up recently, that I thought was not going to come up. And that had to do with the outer envelope for the absentee ballot.
So what I've heard just in the last hour or so and gotten the communication from some folks is that there is, that there's concern about the fact that two people in a household perhaps get their ballots with a different outer envelope that has different wording, different information required on it. That is just because the envelope style changed in, I'm going to say last year. And because there were issues in the 2008 election about what information had to be provided on the outside of the envelope, which I want to say to anybody that's listening, all that's really necessary is your signature. Everything else that might be asked for on there is really not required because we have a sticker on there, a label that tells us everything we need to know about that voter, which is why what style envelope it wasn't an issue for us because all we're looking for is the signature. But I understand people are concerned about why did I get this style envelope, not that style.
Because the old style has your birth date and address.
Right. So we have, I've asked staff, like I said, I just got communication about this just recently, but I've asked the staff to tell me kind of what's the stockpile of the old ones. And, we were told that from the state that it was no problem to use the old style. So we've been using up our supply, but we also have some of the new styles. So as long as we have enough and we're not going to run out, then I would be okay not using the old style. That's a problem.
Okay, I think that, I think people are as concerned about identity theft and this possibility, whether it is likely or not, that's the main concern.
Right. And I think that's why the style was changed to begin with.
So we'll just went through what we have of the new, and then resort to the old. Is that what we're saying?
What we're going to do is find out, if we have enough of the new, we'll just transition all of it to the new and get rid of the old. It's just that we were trying to be stewards of resources and not have to, get more forms.
Please
We
don't
still have the
trip.
old. I was almost going to say that.
We're not doing that. And the last thing, has to do with the absentee numbers, the application numbers. Where are we? Numbers.
Oh, how many have been issued?
Applications are in, yes.
I haven't gotten a recent number.
Well,
So I've
maybe
been
not
part of
even
the
issued,
recount.
how many have been requested, yes. How many have been requested in relation to how close we are to the election?
I don't have the exact numbers. I do know that what we call the rollover list is the people that have asked for a continuing ballot each time. That was about 50,000. Those were mailed out by the state's vendor. And we heard that they were being mailed actually starting this week, even though the date that it says on MVP is November 18th. And then the ones that we've been issuing, the last I heard, maybe Bo has a better number, is around 37,000.
That's the number that.
Yeah, okay, so.
Nearing 100,000.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it, but, thank you.
Sure.
Mhm.
Anybody else, Derek?
Yeah, I had some voters ask the question, what are the measures that are being taken to make sure that absentee voters are A, registered, B, alive, and thirdly, eligible to vote? I know these are like really simple things that you guys probably go over a million times with us. I just, for the education of everybody, please, as briefly as possible, can you go.
Okay, so in other words, how do we validate that an
Right, that
absentee
is-
ballot is that
Right.
truly a
Counted.
good one, yeah, a valid one? There's been a lot of questions about signature verification and how we know, that the person is really the right voter.
Yes.
So when somebody applies, if there's a signature on the application, we will compare that to the voter registration file. And of course, we have lots of examples of people's signatures if they've been registered for a while, but we also always have at least one with the driver services or with their original application. So we compare that. If there's any question about an application matching, we can still send them a ballot. It can be considered provisional. And then we send them notification that they're going to have to provide us with a copy of their ID and an affidavit assuring us that it's them. So then, time goes by and the ballot comes back in. And the ballot signature, we have a kind of a higher level of scrutiny on that because, we'll send you a ballot. It'll be provisional if we're even a little unsure about your application. But when the ballot comes back, that higher level of scrutiny compares that signature again to either the application but if there was any question on the application, certainly to the original signature that's on file. And, we are looking for similarities and differences and sort of a preponderance of the evidence that's presented. So there, we did get training from the Secretary of State through our conference, with the GBI about how to do that. And we put procedures in place and training for our staff. It's sort of a train the trainer thing. They train us and then we train the workers. But they haven't actually gotten, professional training, but we put our training in place with the procedures and, with our supervisors helping them to make these determinations. If the signature is determined to be questionable, maybe not matching, the voter is sent a letter and either an email or a phone call if we have that information. That they have to provide a copy of their ID and sign an affidavit saying that that's really them before their ballot can be counted.
Now, how do they provide this? Is this provided, in what way do they typically provide this to them?
Either they'll mail it back or they'll scan it, send it to us. Same way with provisional ID. We can get it faxed, mailed, hand delivered, scanned and emailed. Sort of thing. Any questions from you?
There's been some talk I've heard recently, I guess TV or radio, concerning suggesting that we should require having a photo ID or some kind of ID come in with an application. And what would that entail, or what kind of difficulties or problems, or would there be any kind of problem with having that?
So that was actually a suggestion in one of the bills that was presented in the last legislative session, but it didn't pass. It was, there was a perception at that time that would be a hardship for people to do that, and perhaps their ballot wouldn't count because they failed to do that. But I think that's going to be coming up again as an extra security beyond signature verification. So that was, as it was proposed, as you mailed your ballot in or dropped it off, your voted ballot is in there, and then your copy of your ID is in, I guess, between the inner envelope and the outer envelope, because it has to be verified. I'm not quite sure with the logistics of what that would look like, but I know there is a talk about doing that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is how the on the logistics side of it, how it would affect it, slow the process down or whatever.
Yeah, it remains to be seen what the actual procedure would look like, but I'm sure whatever bill is dropped will have some indication of what they want us to do.
When will you be able to start testing our machines to be set up to use for the upcoming?
Okay, so you're gonna go there. Yes. So there is a temporary restraining order for 3 counties, and Cobb is one of them, to not update or change the equipment that was used in November due to a court case. And, you know, I don't think we need to go into what the details are unless you want to ask Greg about that. But we are going forward with trying to get released from that, or at least for most of the equipment to be released so that we can start testing. We have enough equipment that was not used in November to go ahead and test and deploy for advanced voting. But we don't have enough equipment to staff the polls, to deploy to the polls. So we're getting up to a critical time to even be able to complete the testing. If we don't start early next week, we'll be in trouble.
That was my concern. And I know people don't like long lines. We have complaints about long lines, and we're doing it on purpose somehow or whatever. But I think people need to realize that a lot of this is, if there is an order like this judge's order, it keeps it. We had that happen with our other machines, didn't we?
Yes.
They kept them, and then we didn't have as many machines to go around. And when you don't, it's going to take longer for people to vote. Then the lines are going to be longer. So when people start having long lines,
Right.
you think where it comes from.
I know, but we're kind of at the mercy of the.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I just want people to be more understanding of underlying.
And it's a temporary order.
Yes.
They have to show cause. And I think it's 10 days?
I think it was supposed to expire on the 9th.
I mean, 10 days from when it was done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a permanent order.
Well, I understand, but it's her schedule, you're already going to be starting with the testing and everything, right?
Yeah.
She's used to that.
I know, right?
So maybe they're delaying it, so.
Yes. I mean, it's going to be difficult. We might end up, I mean, I don't want to project further than
Right.
just, we'll see where it goes. But I mean, there's a possibility that we won't be able to test enough equipment or the equipment that we have planned to put out, and we'll have to scale back on that. I mean, there are things that we'll have to decide as we go to see what happens.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that information. Anybody else have any further questions or comments or anything? All right, well then our next scheduled board meeting is December the 14th at 4 p.m. It'll be at this location. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Well, you got to remember to sign also.
I don't have that on the agenda.
You can do it after.
Nobody leave. You have,
Nobody leave.
We'll sign.
Lock the doors.
Yeah, right. But, so you want us to sign before?
No,
we
you can
adjourn?
adjourn it. Just make sure you know to sign.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that reminder. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion in a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. Appreciate everybody participating.
all right, let's get them to sign.
I remember we have, online there.
What's the one we're gonna see now?
The-
Yeah.